After finishing his intense battle with Nate, his hour using the VR capsule was up, and Quinn was no longer able to participate in any more matches. Although he had lost his match, he felt satisfied. He had learnt a lot during his battle with Nate. His attacks, including his blood swipe, were not strong enough to do any damage to Nate while he was using his metal ability. However, his hammer strike skill was. Hammer strike didn't increase his strength, but now Quinn had a good idea what it did do. It was an attack that focused on the inside, an internal attack, the perfect counter to those with abilities who hardened or transformed their bodies. Quinn couldn't wait to find out what the other tutorials the blonde man had in store for him, but he had no idea how to unlock them. The blonde man had simply said they would unlock for him when he was ready. This meant two things. One might be when Quinn's stats were high enough to complete the fighting skills requirements, or when Quinn was a high enough level. The second lesson the fight had taught him was how important stamina was. The flash step was an incredible skill that allowed him to avoid a strike in an instant. But if he used it more than twice, then he would be done for, and if he was out in the sun, he wasn't even sure he would be able to use the skill at all. This made Quinn think long and hard about what to put his stat points into in the future. Perhaps going for an agility or strength-based character wasn't the best thing after all. With that in mind, Quinn had set up an important meeting with Layla today. There was one thing he needed to learn about more than anything, especially if he wanted to get stronger in the future. It was a Sunday, so Quinn still had the rest of the day off before having to go back to the standard military lessons for the week. The sun was out bright and early, and Quinn was standing outside the school gates patiently waiting for Layla. Even though it was the weekend, Quinn still wore his school uniform, for he didn't have any other clothes other than what was provided to him, and he had long grown out of his old school uniform. "This damn sun," Quinn said while his body was covered in sweat. All current stats have been halved. Ever since he had evolved from a human into a halfling, the sun seemed to bother him even more. He was covered in sweat, even though it wasn't that hot, and he was starting to have ringing headaches if he stayed outside too long. Finally, after waiting a while, Layla had arrived. She was wearing a beautiful red dress that showed off her long legs nicely, along with her short hair. She still carried her bow and had her quiver by her side, and on her back was a fairly large bag. "You ready?" Layla asked, smiling. Quinn looked at the large bag on her back. It must have been heavy, he thought. "Do you want me to carry that for you?" Quinn asked. Although with his stats halved and his strength draining from his body, he was hoping she would say no. "It's okay, the bag is lighter than you think. I'm using my ability to make it lighter," Layla replied. Quinn wasn't sure if she was being truthful or not, and didn't know what to do in these types of situations. Were you meant to insist and be pushy, or be a gentleman and offer a hand, or listen to the girl? If she said she could do it, then she could do it. In the end, Quinn didn't want to think too hard about it, and decided to just let Layla carry on holding the heavy bag. If she wanted him to really carry the bag, then she should just ask him. The two of them walked out of the school's premises and carried on walking until they eventually reached a nice quiet park. There were some students outside messing around, playing with their abilities, and at the same time, there was some military personnel relaxing on the benches. "Peaceful, isn't it?" Layla said. "Yeah, it's kind of nice." Then a thought came into his head of all the news he had heard on TV, about what life was like during the war, how it could start up again any second, and finally, the death of his parents. "But who knows how long it will last? That's why I need to keep getting stronger." Layla placed the heavy bag on the ground, and it seemed like it was a weight off her shoulders. Even if she was using her ability, it would be tiring for someone to keep it up on the whole walk here. That's when Layla started to empty out all the contents of her bag. There were all sorts of things inside. There were several items of thick clothing, such as hats, scarves, sunglasses, and most of it seemed to be black in color. Then she continued to pull out even more stuff, lotions and lotions of sun cream, and finally, she pulled out an umbrella. "Did it cost a lot?" Quinn asked, worried after seeing how much she had bought. "Don't worry about it. My family sent me the credits, and I used up what the academy gave me." Layla replied, "Besides, I got it all from the marketplace place, so it was dirt cheap." The marketplace was an online store that was used all around the world. It sold your everyday items such as food, clothes, utilities, and other things. With the use of teleporters, your items were able to be shipped to you in almost an instant, as long as you could afford one of these. If not, you would have to go to a collection point, and the military school had one of these collection points for students to use. But other than just your everyday items, the marketplace was also used by people to sell and buy beast weapons, skill books, ability books, and all sorts of things that would be beneficial to you in battles. However, to access this part of the marketplace, you would either need a military personnel ID, which all students got a temporary one to use during their time there, or if you were a traveler. Travelers were people who didn't work for the military, but worked for a private company, and often went into portals to explore different worlds. "So what do you want to try first?" Layla said, holding the sun cream in her hand. The two of them had gathered in the park, not just for a casual chat and a peaceful evening, but there was a goal in mind. And although Quinn usually found Layla to be obsessive, it seemed like her crazy, strange self would come in handy. The whole purpose of today was to find out if there was any way to either reduce the effect that the sun had on the system or even temporarily stop it altogether, and there was no one better than Layla for the job. She knew everything about vampires, having grown up reading about them. She ordered whatever she thought might have been effective. Quinn looked at all the items that she had brought over, and he then noticed a few more things on the ground with her. There was a metal-shaped cross, a clove of garlic, and even a piece of silver jewelry. "Oh, those are for later," Layla said, embarrassed, noticing Quinn staring at her stuff. "We should also try to find out if you have any other weaknesses of normal vampires as well." "All right, why don't we just try the umbrella first?" Quinn said as he knelt down to pick it up. He then stood still and popped open the umbrella, which was solid black in color, to make sure that most of the light didn't penetrate or get through it. Quinn then adjusted the umbrella a few times to make sure his body was completely covered in the shadow. Then, to his surprise, stats have returned to normal. While Quinn was fully covered under the shade, his stats had returned. Then he lifted his hand and placed it outside the shade zone ever so slightly, and as soon as the tiniest part of his finger was outside, the same usual status screen had appeared. "You are being affected by direct sunlight. All stats will be halved." "Well?" Layla asked. "It works, but even if a little bit of my body is in the sun, I start to feel weak." This wouldn't do. Holding the umbrella, although it would return his stats, it would be difficult to use in a fight. One hand would be occupied holding the umbrella, while the other would be free. Also, it was a big, weak target that the enemy could easily destroy. But at least he found out that if he just carried an umbrella with him, he would no longer feel weak. It was a good idea to keep one on him for now. "That's a special umbrella," Layla said. "It's one used to block out the UV from the sun, although at most, it can block out about 90%. It's not perfect. To be honest, I'm surprised it worked." "Are the UV rays why I feel weak then?" "Not necessarily. I mean, vampire lore is all over the place, but these myths had to be grounded somewhere, right?" Layla then looked at the ground and picked up the sun cream. If the umbrella really worked because of the UV, then the sun cream should have some effect. Layla then walked up to Quinn, squirting some of the cream onto her hand. "You ready?" Quinn then went a little red, thinking about Layla applying the cream onto his body. Looking at Layla now out of her school uniform, he realized she was kind of cute. So what? She was a little strange and knew too much about vampires. Everyone had their geeky thing they knew about and were obsessed with. Then Quinn felt something cold on his leg. She had taken Quinn's silence as a yes and started to slather the cream all over his body. After making sure everywhere she could see was covered in cream, to finish it off, she placed sunglasses over Quinn's eyes. "Although we can stop the UV on your eyelids, we can't on your eyeballs," Layla said. "Well, anything?" This time, there was no such result. When opening up his status, the UV cream hadn't even made a little bit of impact. Quinn still felt incredibly weak, and his stats were still halved. So it looks like it has nothing to do with the UV then. Although the umbrella worked, it can only block so much of the UV, and same with the cream, so I was hoping it would have some effect. But this means it's most likely some other property in the sun that we don't know about. To be honest, Quinn was thankful that the sun cream didn't work. The idea of waking up every day and doing it as a daily routine, at some point, the cream would wear off too. He also couldn't imagine, in the middle of the fight, asking his opponent to wait to lather and cream himself all over. He had pictures in his head of asking Vorden to cover for him while he brought out a bottle of sun cream. Finally, it was time for the last test. This one Quinn was dreading the most, the clothes test. He was already sweating and feeling hot as it was, and couldn't imagine putting on a load of black clothing. But he thought it was best to get it over and done with as soon as possible. First, Quinn placed a sweater over the top of his body, then a pair of black, thick trousers on his feet. Instead of trainers, he changed to black boots, and on his hands a pair of black leather gloves. Finally, on his head, he had a large top hat. Looking at him, Layla could barely hold in her laughter. He looked ridiculous. "Breathe, Layla," she mumbled. "Well, anything." "No, not yet, anyway." "Well, we might as well try the rest." Layla then continued to place clothes onto Quinn. This time, she had covered his face with a balaclava, and even where his eyes were, she had put a sleeping mask on. More hats were placed on, and now every inch of his skin was covered. "Anything?" "No!" Quinn shouted, but it sounded muffled through the clothes. However, Layla didn't give up yet. She felt as if the umbrella had worked, so this had to work as well. She continued to place all the remaining clothes she had brought with her, and then finally, while Layla was piling on the clothes, Quinn managed to shout something. "Wait, it's working," Quinn said. Although the clothes had worked, Quinn was around 3 inches thick in black clothing. Layla quickly helped Quinn take off all his clothing, as it seemed like he was a bit wobbly on his legs and was going to pass out any second now. Once the two of them were finished, Quinn opened up the umbrella, and the energy started to restore back into his body again. The two of them sat down on the clean-cut grass and discussed the results of the test. "Well, you can't go out like that," Layla said. "You couldn't move in the thing." "Agreed, but at least we know that the most important thing is to stop the sun hitting me." Quinn started to feel the umbrella, wondering if perhaps he could get clothes made out of the same material. Then the problem would be that the material would be too weak. Most likely, the reason the clothes didn't work so well was that they didn't block out the sun enough. He needed more solid but flexible material. There was some stuff out there that might have worked, like a black latex suit or something, but these weren't strong enough for fighting. It could easily be torn or ripped, and then he would be back to being normal, weak Quinn again. Suddenly, a thought had entered Quinn's mind. He started to remember the fight he had had inside the VR game. When he had gone against Sam, he had used a cape that was able to block his blood swipe. The material was not only flexible, but strong as well. The cape was most likely made from some type of beast, from one of the portals. If Quinn could get enough of this material, maybe he could make a suit of some kind that could not only protect him from the sun, but also be strong enough to be used in combat. A smile started to appear on his face. He now couldn't wait to be transported to hunt some beasts. After finishing the test with the items, Layla was eager to try out a few of the other things she had brought along with her. "Do I really have to worry about something like this?" Quinn said as he picked up a clove of garlic. "Not really, to be honest. I just wanted to try out everything. Garlic always acted more as a repellent in the first place, and the fact that you're holding it like that would suggest it wouldn't hurt." While Quinn looked at the piece of garlic, he decided to use the inspect skill just to be sure. If something were to harm him, he was sure the system would be able to tell him basic information such as this. Inspect. A glove of garlic. Due to your heightened senses, the piece may taste extremely bad. Safe to consume. The good news was that the system had informed him that the garlic wasn't poisonous, which meant it would be able to do with the other items as well. The bad news was that he still had to eat the garlic, so Layla didn't get suspicious. He broke the glove into a small piece before placing it into his mouth. The taste was incredibly strong. It felt like he was eating dog crap. Not that he knew how that tasted anyway, but if he had to imagine, this was it. Quinn immediately started to spit on the ground, trying to get the taste out of his mouth. "Well, at least you look fine," Layla said. Quinn had actually expected this result before even using his inspect skill. The taste of food had slightly changed ever since his evolution. Sweet food such as ice cream and cakes now tasted bland. It was the same with fruit. The only thing that still tasted fine for him was meat. Although everything seemed to taste slightly saltier than before, it was the same with other herbs as well. Although there was one thing that drastically changed for him, and that was blood. It was a greater taste than anything he had before, and was as sweet as caramel itself. Just thinking about it, Quinn wanted another taste, but he was still able to control himself just fine. It was the same way when someone thought about chocolate. They suddenly wanted chocolate, but they didn't need it. Before touching any of the other items, Quinn made sure to use his inspect skill on each one. First was the metal cross, a religious symbol that has no effect, the system said. Then the chain, a silver chain that is made up of 92% silver. Wearing the item can be used as a fashion statement. With both items, there was no such warning. Quinn then proceeded to pick up both of them with no worry. He was starting to trust the system more and more lately, as it had been more helpful and accurate. "So, what's the story behind these two things?" Quinn asked. "I kind of get the cross, but what about the silver? And are they just for werewolves?" Suddenly, Layla's eyes started to sparkle. "I'm glad you asked. Vampire lore goes further back than you think. Even in Greek mythology, they have tales of vampires. The first vampire was said to be cursed by the god Apollo, to be burnt by sunlight. Then, when the man tried to touch Artemis's bow, she cursed the human further to be affected by silver," Layla explained. "Of course, there are other reasons, but this is one of the older ones." Then, with the cross, vampires have always been seen as workers of the devil, a creature that needed to suck blood to live, and of course God, in the eyes of many, is a fighter of evil, and the cross is a symbol of God. Layla then grabbed both items from Quinn and placed them back in her bag. "But now, looking at you, I can clearly see all of that was a load of rubbish," Layla said, sounding a bit disappointed by the whole experience. "The only vampire weakness it seems you have so far is sunlight, although I have to admit that's a pretty big one. Do you feel like you're not getting older yet?" "What?" Quinn said, confused. "How would I even know? It's only been a few days. I mean, I don't feel any older, but I could say that about the rest of my life. You kind of just get older without realizing it." Then a dreaded thought had entered Quinn's mind. If it was true that he would no longer age, did that mean his appearance would stay the same as it did now? Would he look like a young teenage boy for the rest of his life? With the tests over, it was time for the two of them to head back to their dorm rooms. Quinn decided to head back and see if Vorden and Peter wanted to hang out and do something for the rest of the evening. But when he entered the room, once again, neither Vorden nor Peter was there. Vorden, Quinn didn't worry too much about. It seemed like he had been getting into trouble lately with the second years, but currently, they were staying well clear of him after the incident. It was Peter who Quinn was more worried about. He couldn't help but shake the feeling that these new friends of Peter's weren't really friends of his, and he was wondering what to do. With that, Quinn decided to sleep for the night and wait till the next day. When he woke up, he was happy to see that the other two had managed to return to their rooms in the middle of the night. For once, the three of them had decided to head down to the canteen together, and for a long time, the three of them casually ate food and chatted about what they had done yesterday. Once the three of them had finished eating, it was time for them to head to their homeroom classes together. On Monday morning, they were to attend a morning class with their teacher, Dell. This lesson would be theory-based, either the history of the human race or even a notice about what would happen during an expedition. The three of them sat in the back of the class as usual, while Layla sat at the front with Aaron by her side. The students waited patiently until Dell had finally arrived. "All right, class, I have an important announcement to make. The preparations for your first portal outing have been completed. It's time for you kids to go explore the universe a bit more." Before Dell was to inform the students about the portal training they would be participating in. He needed to explain to the students how the portals worked. After all, it would be a first for nearly every student there, apart from a few of them. Portals allowed humans to travel to and from locations that they had been to before. They were often used to travel to other planets. The technology was obtained when humanity managed to take down their first Dalki ship and discovered a portal inside. Usually, when such advanced technology was discovered, people wouldn't be able to dissect and replicate it so easily. Just because you had the technology didn't mean you understood how it worked. But thanks to a legendary scientist named Richard Eno, he had easily been able to dissect all of the equipment found on board the ship. Another great contributor to the war against the Dalki. Some people assumed that he had an ability of some sort that helped him along the way, but these were just rumors, and no one knew for sure. However, one thing was certain. He was a great man. Once he had found this technology, he distributed it not only to the military, but also to private companies. He made sure that such power wouldn't just end up in one group's hands. Back then, the world and humans were fighting together, but who knew what would happen once the war had ended? In today's world, there are generally 3 different groups of people who have owned portals. The military was the first group. Next were private corporations. They usually had powerful originals backing them, and many of these companies would also form a faction, a group of powerful travelers, just for exploring other planets. And lastly was the group known as Pure, a group that didn't believe in the use of abilities. There were 3 types of portals, each different in color. There was green, orange, and red. Each of these portals meant a different thing. Green meant that the planet it led to had already been explored, and there were human shelters that had been built. These allowed people to live there if they wished, or just stay temporarily. The next was orange, which meant that the planet hadn't been fully explored yet. There were some shelters in place, but the level of the beast could be too high in certain areas, or they just hadn't explored everywhere yet. And finally, the red portals. These were unexplored planets. There were no shelters for regular humans to live in. Only travelers or military personnel would usually go into these portals for exploration, and the worst thing about them was that they didn't know if the Dalki were on the planet as well. After all, the Dalki had the same technology, so it wouldn't be too strange to run into them. And although under a treaty, if a few people were to go missing on an unknown planet, it was hard to prove something had happened, and the humans weren't ready for another war just yet. That's all the information you need to know about portals, Dell said. A student then raised his hand who was seated in the center of the class. What? Dell said. What about the beasts that were discovered on those planets? Will we learn about them? The student asked. For now, that's all you need to know about the portals, yes. This also led us to discover beasts on these planets, and they are what we use to create our beast weapons. But you will be told more details about that when you arrive, Dell explained, although I will tell you now that you can also thank Richard Eno for that discovery as well. Dell then closed the presentation that was playing behind him. Now, for the important part, the portal expedition will take place next week, but before even that, you will be required to form your team of 5. Although on this trip, you will travel as a class, you must have a squad and stick together. Even the green portals are a dangerous place filled with beasts, and the trackers on your watch will not work outside the academy. We will have no way to come and save you. The same student once again raised his hand, and Dell had a look on his face like it was starting to get annoying. Yes. Do you know where we will be going? That information will be revealed to you on the day of the expedition. Many of you here have family members who, if they knew where you were, would send guards out to protect you on these planets. But that wouldn't be fair, especially since we will also be assessing you on this. The student once again raised his hand, but Dell stared back at him, forcing him to slowly put his hand down again. Now, if there aren't any more questions, your combat classes for today are canceled. Today you are to form a team of 5 and report back to us by the end of the day. Dell then left the room to attend to other business while allowing the students to form their group of 5. Vorden then turned his head immediately. Hey Quinn, you want to be on the... But already standing by Quinn's side was Layla, who had sprinted from the front of the class to the back. Hey, do you want to make a team with me, Quinn? Layla said, smiling. Sure, Quinn answered. Truthfully, Quinn wanted to ask Layla to be on the same team. They didn't know how long their first assessment was going to take, and if he was to get hurt or injured, he was going to need a blood source of some type. Even if Vorden didn't like it, he knew this was going to happen. Hey Quinn, you mind if I join as well? He said, smiling, trying to hide his annoyance. Of course, and Peter as well. Peter's face was a little shocked at hearing the sound of his name, and at the same time, his feelings were confused. Yeah, that would be good, Peter said. Then, when the others were just thinking about who the 5th member should be, Aaron had approached Vorden of all people in the room. I want to make a team with you. It seemed like she was disinterested in everything apart from getting stronger. I'm sorry, Vorden said, but I've already decided to make a team with these guys. Vorden's response to Aaron seemed to be even crazier to everyone else as well. They had seen Vorden fight that day when they were surrounded by the second years. After witnessing that, no one would say he was any weaker than Aaron. If the two of them were to combine powers and find a few other strong people, it meant they could easily come up with the strongest team in the class. Aaron then looked at the group of people whom Vorden pointed at. To be honest, she didn't seem to recognize any of them. Who are they? Aaron said. What? We took the test together. I even helped you out at the assembly hall, Layla complained. The truth was, Aaron never took the time to remember people's faces. She only cared about those who were strong. When she saw how weak they were in the test assessment, she didn't even bother with them any longer. Although there was one person who had caught her eye other than Vorden, and that was Quinn. She remembered him throwing the black beast balls at a lightning-fast speed and taking out a student. Then, when she looked at his wrist, she saw he was only a level 1 user. Why would you stay with these weak people? Surely you can get a better grade if you join me and a few others, Aaron said. The first assessment and future assessments in the portal outing would determine their final grade. For those who had a cozy family to get back to, it didn't matter too much, but to the rest, it was used to determine their future. The grade they got when they left the military academy would decide whether they could join a strong private company or whether they would just end up joining the bottom of the barrel, being treated even worse than now. I don't care about the grades, I just want to have fun while I'm still in school, Vorden replied. But Aaron was determined not to give up. Fine, I can accept the girl and the strangely strong boy, but I can't accept him, Aaron said, pointing at Peter. Peter's heart suddenly started to thump louder. A fear started to take over him as he heard Aaron speak these words. If he didn't get into Vorden and Quinn's team, he would be in huge trouble. Why do we need you anyway? Vorden said. Wait a minute, Layla interrupted. I think she would make a good addition to the team. Besides Vorden, doesn't your ability rely on those around you to be strong as well? As far as I remember, beasts don't have abilities, so you would have to rely on us, and we don't exactly have strong abilities. Layla, I understand what you are saying, but for once, I agree with Vorden, Quinn replied. I don't care how strong she is. She can't just come in and kick one of us out. She can join the team, but only if Peter stays. It was good to have strong allies, but at what cost? If Quinn was to kick out Peter to replace him with a stranger, he would just be as bad as everyone else who had treated him like crap, just for being weak. He didn't want to change into one of those types of people. Aaron then started to look around the room before looking at Vorden once again. She thought back to how Vorden was able to deal with Momo quite well before the use of the soul weapon. After looking around the room, there didn't seem to be a single person in Dell's class who matched up to him. Fine, I will join, but I wish for the 5 of us to have a retesting to see where we stand, Aaron said. Perhaps we can go visit the training center, display what we can do to the rest. Layla and Quinn looked at each other with a half-worried look in their eye. The 5 of them then headed down to the training center, which was the same place that Layla had first spotted Quinn, who had sneaked into the place at night. Right now, the room was filled with multiple different people from all sorts of different classes. All the other classes had also been informed about the upcoming test and had decided to find out what each other's abilities were. This would give them the best chance of defeating and capturing as many beasts as possible and increasing their chances of survival. Well, what do you want us to do? Vorden asked. I've already seen your powers, but I can't remember too much about the girl and the other 2. Perhaps the girl can go first on the strength machine. Layla went up as asked and went to the large circular strength machine. She concentrated her mind and threw out her fist at the same time, using the force of her telekinesis to push her hand as strongly as she could. The numbers slowly went up on the machine's display until it had eventually reached number 8. Damn it, same as last time. Looks like I haven't improved much, Layla complained. For a level 2, that's quite a weak strength score, but judging by the bow, you're a ranged user anyway, it will be quite handy to have someone like you on the team, Aaron said. She then walked up to the 2 boys, Quinn and Peter. Well, I'm hoping that both of you can at least get the same score as her. Quinn was starting to get annoyed by all her taunts, but he took a deep breath and held it in. With her on the team, it would cause fewer troubles with the others. Even if they did defeat beasts and obtain their crystals, there was a high chance that another team might target them and try to steal them. But just having Aaron on the team would stop that. Peter walked up to the machine holding the mud staff in his hand. "Looks like he's still level 1 then," Aaron said. Level 1 Earth users didn't have the ability to extract Earth from the ground. All they could do was reform the Earth in their hands. They could only control the Earth they were touching, rather than the Earth around them. As Peter went to punch the machine, the Earth around the pole started to form around his fist. As he hit the machine, the numbers started to go up, and finally, it stopped at 8. The same score as Layla. "Well, what are you waiting for?" Aaron said, looking at Quinn.